Welcome to the Thunder and Lightning Show. We have a lot of topics to cover today. We're going to start out, I believe, with the minor orders. So this was particularly interesting based on our conversation this past week, where you mentioned, and this isn't really related, but you mentioned something about a friend of yours who let you know about this one Novus Ordo parish where there was like a woman deacon. And you
Yeah.
described. Do you want to describe this, because I can give my 2 cents here.
Yeah. So it was somebody that contacted me and they said, hey, I went and visited this parish and it's not very far from me. And they said, I went to the Novus there and it was horrific that they had this deaconette there and she was wearing like a white alb and she was going up to the altar and not genuflecting or doing any reverences. And she set up the altar for the mass of the faithful, prepared the chalice and set up the book and all this stuff. And then she was like wearing this alb and had this, I don't know, crucifix around her neck. And then she went and distributed Holy Communion. So basically, she's a deaconette. That's exactly what she is. The only thing she didn't do was read the gospel, but she more or less did everything else.
Well, and so my reaction here was that this is actually pretty commonplace in my experience in Novus Ordo world.
Yeah.
And it's because, the Eucharistic ministers in a lot of parishes wear white robes. And my thought was she must have just been a server and they just doubled, and they had
She was an old woman.
Yeah, well, they still have adult altar servers.
Yeah, I guess they do.
And
adult altar girls.
Well, and I've seen them. It's very, very weird when you kind of think about it. But it's just kind of what happens in Novus Ordo world now. In the Francis Church, that's actually permissible for her to be installed as an acolyte.
Yeah, acolytes and lectorettes.
Yeah, but so yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. But we are going to talk about minor orders.
Well, this girl that mentioned this to me, she actually goes to a Latin Mass parish in a faraway city, and she's just in town, occasionally or whatever. And unfortunately, had to go to this novus, to this nervous disorder, because the Latin Masses are really far away from her where she is in the temporary basis. So, unfortunately, so she's scandalized by this deaconette, and I would be too. I haven't been in a novus in years, so I don't even know what it's like anymore. I mean, I think all those of us who have been in the Latin Mass world for so long think every Novus Ordo is bongos, balloons, and liturgical dancers. But it's actually, is it really that far away from that? Because even your average one has a deaconette now.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh, and where I was going, I regained my train of thought, was that really they don't have official installation ceremonies for these lectorettes or acolytes. They just have the clearance, the background check.
Oh, that's sacramental. Once you get your background check, then that's the equivalent of like canonical status and getting a sacrament of holy orders is that background check, because that's what's really important is secular approbation.
It is kind of important, I will say.
Well, no, it's only important if your number one concern is the
liability.
Is liability. Yeah, if the lawyers run the show, well, then that's the most important thing.
Well, at the same time, you still kind of want that. But you know what,
John, I've said this a million times before. Background checks don't stop anybody from doing anything bad. All it does is say this person has never been caught doing something bad before. And everybody who does something bad does it the first time. So there's nothing to catch in their background. So
that's true.
It's completely silly to think that background checks are going to all of a sudden like just stamp out bad behavior.
No, it's not going to save it. But like, I would say, if I'm a financial fraud, say I served like 5 years in jail for financial fraud, you wouldn't want me counting the money at church.
No, you're correct. So yeah,
I think it. I think it's a small thing, a small step you can take, like to prevent bad people who have bad pasts. Like, you're not going to exclude them from church. Like, church militants running these stories about people who came out of jail, went to the SSPX. They're like, oh, the SSPX is shielding criminals. Well, not really.
You're talking about lay people.
Yeah, I mean,
who are in the congregation.
Yeah, that's what they're doing. So I don't know. It's
but no, you're talking about a distinction between a layperson in the congregation and then a deaconette or a reader or a lectorate or whatever. I've actually been to some of these so-called installation ceremonies. Ladies and gentlemen, you may be shocked to believe this, but at one time, yours truly, Ryan the Retrograde, actually attended the Novus Disorder and a daily mass. And so anyway, so at these at daily masses, certain ones, they would do the installation, and they would come in there, and the people would say like, oh, the priest would say, these are the things you have to do to be a lector or an unnecessary minister of Holy Communion. And then he would give them some kind of blessing, and then they would go sit down, or maybe he would give them a pyx or something. That's the extent of it. And anyway, what the topic we're going to go over today is the actual ordination rites. This is the authentic Roman rite here that we're going to go over. And John, I sent you the link in the private chat for the document, which is freely available online. There's a fantastic English translation of the ordination rites pre-Vatican II.
All right, let me copy that to the live chat. Do you want me? Is that what you want me to post on the screen?
The link, or the text.
Well, whatever you had set up.
Well, I have the window shared, so you can go ahead and share that window, and I'll start with.
There we go.
All right, I'll start with this book. Let me find the title page here to give you the name of it. The Rite of Ordination, according to the Roman Pontifical from 1892. This is the one that was in effect until, I think, 60 or 62. I don't think the ordination rites were changed at all in 1962. But we'll just begin here. I see some comments here. Patty McMullen, greetings to you and all of our faithful friends in Ireland. Patty says a priest in Dublin came down the aisle on a small scooter on Christmas morning mass.
I think I saw that video.
It's crazy. Crazy. Louis Marie de Montfort, welcome. He says Coors is awesome. And then he says, yeah, they give this, he's talking about the pyx that they give to these unnecessary ministers. They put the pyx in the shorts or jeans pocket. Yeah, exactly. It's bad times. That's not a good look. Traditionally, the priest would be, or deacon would be the one to carry the pyx, and it would be around the neck. And they would always go around. They would have a server with a candle who would accompany them, or they would carry a candle themselves, because it's very serious business to go walking about with the Blessed Sacrament. Okay, so this is page 5 of the document here. The rite of ordination. This, by the way this is set up is this happens during the Ember Saturday Mass, which, if you remember, I don't know if you've ever been to an Ember Saturday Mass, but it has like 5 lessons in it, maybe 4. I don't really remember. And then there's tracks in between all these. And after each one of them, then there's a rite of ordination that occurs. So tonsure occurs after the Kyrie, and they call everybody up, and the archdeacon says some stuff to the bishop, and basically what they do is they say, hey, if anybody here is excommunicated or irregular or under interdict, suspended, illegitimate, infamous, or otherwise excluded, you have to get out of here. Don't come forward to receive orders. And then the archdeacon says, oh, by the way, if anybody gets orders, they're not allowed to leave until the Mass is over and until you've gotten a blessing, which I think is hilarious that they ended up putting that in there. So then he calls up all these guys to be tonsured, and the bishop exhorts them to keep the practice of religion forever and protect their hearts from the stumbling blocks of the world and from worldly desires, so that even as they are changed in outward appearance, he, that's Almighty God, may likewise grant them an increase of virtue, and opening their eyes, deliver them from all spiritual and human blindness, and bestow upon them the light of everlasting grace. So in this tonsure, the bishop urges them, or prays to Almighty God, that the stumbling blocks of the world and worldly desires are removed from the cleric. And keep in mind, these are guys who are just starting on the path of holy religion. This is the lowest degree of orders that you could get. They sing some psalms. The bishop cuts the hair, recites a short prayer. There's more psalms. And then the bishop gives them I believe then he gives them the cassock and the surplice. He says, "Hearken, O Lord, to our supplication, and vouchsafe to bless these thy servants, whom in thy sacred name we invest with the habit of holy religion, that through thy bounty they may deserve to persevere devout in thy church and attain to everlasting life." And by the way, remember how we discussed about the cassock being a sacramental, and when you receive the sacrament, the cassock, that's a blessing. This is what we're talking about right here. The bishop says, May the Lord put on thee may the Lord put on thee the new man, who according to God is created in justice and in the holiness of truth." Then he says another prayer. "O Almighty everlasting God, forgive us our sins, and free these thy servants from all the slavery of secular dress. Grant that while they put off the ignominy, I don't know how to pronounce that, of the worldly garb, they may enjoy thy grace forevermore, and that as we make them bear on their heads the likeness of thy crown, so by thy strength they may deserve to obtain the everlasting inheritance in their hearts." So the bishop calls secular dress a slavery, and worldly garb is ignominious.
Wow.
But then they've put that off, and now they put on clerical dress, so they're elevated. You can see why in the Novus Ordo they got rid of this stuff, because it sets up it sets the clerical life above the secular life, and it says the secular life is slavery, and these people are released from it, and you can't have that in the Novus Ordo.
Well, that's why they wear Saturnos, because it's not like I'm going around wearing a Saturno. Of course, it's not like very many people are wearing a hat like mine either. But
yeah, is that part of your clerical habit, John?
Well, I guess I don't know. It's just the thunder, the order of the thunder. I don't know.
Yeah.
But no, I know that my favorite golfer, Bryson DeChambeau, wears one of these. So
is it
that's probably
a
going to
camouflage hat? Is it camouflage?
No, he doesn't wear. No, he doesn't wear a camo hat. But I saw him wearing one of these, and I was like, oh, he's not my favorite golfer. And now look at him. Look at him now. That's very, very big side note, and probably scandalized a lot of people because a lot of people don't like him. But whatever.
No.
Anyway, sorry about that.
The bishop then puts his mitre on and gives another exhortation. "My dearly beloved children, you ought to ponder well that you are placed today under the jurisdiction of the church and are put in possession of clerical privileges. Take care, therefore, that you do not forfeit these privileges on account of your faults, and strive by a becoming dress, by good conduct and good deeds to please God." So the bishop has basically said, okay, you're now wearing you're wearing clerical clothes. Get rid of those lay clothes, and you have to be a new man because now you're in holy religion. So this is the first step into the path of the clerical life in the church. Any questions about that or remarks before I move on to porters?
Well, for like a Novus Ordo perspective, I know that they have minor orders.
No, they don't. Define what you mean by a minor order.
Some of them have the option of being installed to some of these minor orders, correct?
They are installed to ministries because, according to the modern canon law, minor orders don't exist. They're replaced with ministries, and they do occur. They're not optional. They're pretty much mandatory that you go through those installation ceremonies.
Okay, so then is it?
There's only two of them. There's lector, and then there's acolyte. Those are the only instituted ministries in a Novus Ordo church.
Okay. So I know that some of the priests and seminarians decide to wear a cassock. Would this be part of their process?
No, they don't go through this ritual anymore because they're never made clerics until they become deacons in the Novus Ordo. And that's when you get I believe in the Novus Ordo, that's when you have the right to clerical dress, is when you're ordained a deacon. In the Roman Catholic Church, you are, when you're made a cleric and get a tonsure, then you have a right. You have an obligation to clerical dress. You have to wear clerical dress once you're tonsured.
Okay.
And that happens right off the bat. Now, in the Novus Ordo seminaries, typically after your first year, I think then you can put on the cassock. I know, for instance, in Fraternity of St. Peter, they're in there for a year, and then they go through tonsure, and then they have to wear the cassock.
Now, is the cassock just an option for them?
For who? Fraternity?
The Novus Ordo seminarians?
It depends on your seminary.
Okay. So they can just say, hey, I'm just going to wear my t-shirt and shorts up until I'm ordained a deacon.
No, they might have some kind of dress, like maybe you have to wear a polo shirt or something. It depends on which seminary you're in.
Okay. All right, that's all the questions I have so far.
Okay, let's talk about the porters. So call forward these porters so they all go up. And now the bishop says, here's your duties, what the porter does. It is the duty of a porter to strike the cymbal and to ring the church bell. And I think by cymbal he means, he may mean the altar bell, like the acolyte bell. I'm not entirely sure exactly what that symbol is. Strike the cymbal and ring the church bell, to open the church and the sacristy, and to open the book for the preacher. Take pains, therefore, lest through neglect on your part anything in the church be destroyed. Open the house of God at certain hours to the faithful, and always shut it to unbelievers. Study also as you open and shut with material keys the visible church, so in like manner to shut to the devil and open to God by word and example the invisible house of God, that is the hearts of the faithful, so that they may keep in their hearts and show forth in their works the divine words which they have heard, which may the Lord in his mercy accomplish in you. So, again, this is verboten in the Novus Ordo because he says you're supposed to shut the door to the unbelievers and not let them into the church. And
well, now they're not talking about people that are coming to check it out. They're coming to the people that are coming to ridicule.
Well, no,
right?
Actually, I believe that these rites are from the time period when non-believers the mass was secret, and you were not allowed in unless you were either a Christian or a catechumen. And then a catechumen had to be thrown out at halftime before the Mass of the Faithful began, and the porters did that. But Taylor Marshall had pointed this out, that it was the porter's job to make sure people don't go in there and disrupt the Mass. So they keep the door and they're bouncers. They throw people out if necessary and keep them from coming in.
Hey, I mean, wouldn't mind that now. Now you have the virus police and everything.
Yeah, you have the BLM protesters, the BLT protesters who come in and try to disrupt masses. So you need a porter to throw them out. So the porters to be kneel before the bishop, and he hands them holds these keys, and they touch them, and that's the handing on of the instrument, which represents the ordination. The bishop, after all that, says one last prayer, and he says, "Vouchsafe to bless these servants, whom he has deigned to choose for the office of porter, that they may be most diligent both day and night, in their care of the house of God, never failing to keep in mind the different hours for invoking the name of the Lord. And then there's one more blessing. Vouchsafe to bless these thy servants for the office of porter, that among the doorkeepers of thy church they may obey thee with readiness, and among thy elect they may deserve to have a part in thy reward. So this is kind of, it's pretty specific there. They get the keys to open and shut the door, to be a bouncer, open the book for the preacher. I'm not sure exactly. Is that the preacher at Mass? I'm assuming so. So any questions about the ordination of the porter? That's the first of the minor orders.
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay. Patty
Patty
McMullen says many of the non-believers are the ones on the altar performing the Mass. Yeah, so
well,
you need a porter to bounce these apostate priests and bishops.
yeah, so get some porters for the Jesuits or whoever else.
Yeah. Okay, you ready for the ordination of the lector or reader? Yeah. Okay. Yep. So these guys come up. At what point in time do they come up? It's after the versicle, after the first lesson. Then he reads the second prayer and second lesson. And then the guys to be ordained reader come up. And this is what the bishop says. It is the duty of the reader to read what he preaches, to sing the lessons, and to bless the bread and all the new fruits. Study, therefore, to announce distinctly and clearly the words of God, that is, the holy lessons, for the understanding and the edification of the faithful. Do not falsify the text, lest the truth of the divine lessons intended for the instruction of your hearers should through your carelessness be corrupted. And what you read with your lips, believe in your hearts, and practice by your works, so that you may be able to teach your hearers equally by word and example. Two things that popped up right there is that, first off, that they have the right and duty to bless bread and new fruits, which is something in the Novus Ordo is reserved to priests. And it says, do not falsify the text, which happens all the time in the Novus Ordo, that people are constantly changing the words of the scriptures. Either they do it by committee of the USCCB to wash away so-called hard passages, or the person up there reading themselves is like, oh, well, this doesn't meet modern sensibilities, like Ephesians 5. They say, like, oh, it shows women subject to the husband. Oh, we have to... They put that in the brackets and then they omit it. So here, that's forbidden according to the old rites of ordination.
So, do you know anything about the New Jerusalem edition of the Bible?
Because I believe it's based on the Old Jerusalem Bible, but it's gender neutered, I believe.
And who approved that version of the text?
I don't know, honestly.
Okay, I'll have to research that, because I saw that Ireland, shout out to Patty, I saw that some Irish bishops wanted to use that gender-neutral language, and would that be considered distorting the words?
Well, yeah, it is. Yes, it is distorted, but it's not done by the reader themselves. It's done by the bishops. So it's, I think, 1,000 times worse.
Yeah.
It becomes an official mistranslation.
All right.
So the address of the bishop continues. Wherefore, when you read, stand in a high place in the church, so that you may be heard and seen by all, typifying by your bodily posture how you ought to move in a lofty sphere of virtue, and presenting to all who hear and see you the figure of a heavenly life. Now this is, again, in the time when, and it still exists in the old rite, once you're ordained a reader, then you can sing the epistle at solemn high masses or missa cantata. And I think also in the divine office, when you're ordained a reader, then you could be, I think, one of the guys who sings the chapter at the office, and probably also then the lessons at matins and the table reading during the meals. So the bishop takes a book, and he's kneeling, and they come up and touch the book. He says, "Receive and be rehearsers of the word of God, destined, if you faithfully and usefully fulfill your office, to have part with those who from the beginning have administered well the word of God." Then he prays, Almighty to mercifully bestow his blessing upon these his servants, whom he has vouchsafed to choose for the order of reader, that they may read distinctly what is to be read in the church of God, and put in practice what they read by their works. Then there's takes his mitre off and says another prayer. Vouchsafe to bless these thy servants for the office of reader, that they may be instructed by their diligent reading of the lessons, and make their lives conformable therewith, that they may say what things are to be done, and fulfill indeed what they say, and thus in both ways, by the example of their sanctity, have regard for the welfare of Holy Church. And that's the end of the ordination of the lector.
Okay. And
Any questions about the lector? That was sort of transformed in the Novus Ordo into the ministry of lector. But of course, what use is it when any Tom, Dick, or Harry, or Sally, Jane, or Victoria, can go up and just do a reading without, just waltz up there and do a reading.
Yeah, and I know that I did read at a wedding last year.
Should we cancel John for his public sins that he's just confessed to?
Well, I know I asked my priest if he could install me as a lector in the Novus Ordo, and he was like, "Nah, I don't think." It was, yeah. I mean, it feels, after going to the Latin Mass and stepping onto the altar, you're just like, ooh, it kind of feels weird. And then reading, I don't know, because it was a Catholic wedding. I said, yeah, I'll read, because I don't want to discourage people from getting up. I don't want to discourage them from getting married in the church.
Yeah. Well, you're not. I mean, they're going to get married whether you read or not.
No, but
why doesn't the priest do what he's? Why do we have priests if they're not going to do the readings?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, they don't really.
They don't know anything, right? They don't know any better.
They don't get it. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, and the whole point. Like, I criticize the Novus Ordo a lot on this channel, and I always have to have that disclaimer. Like, the people that go to the Novus Ordo, I'm not criticizing you. I'm not criticizing, a lot of the people that don't understand or the people that are stuck. I don't know your personal situation, so I'm not going to criticize you for attending the Novus Ordo. I just don't like it. It's not very reverent, and I don't think anyone will say that. I mean, some of the comments on my Bishop Barron video, some of the commenters will say that. They'll say, "Oh yeah, no, I have a reverent Novus Ordo." Well, how so? Well, we only have like 5 Eucharistic ministers. And, like, I don't know. Like, what do you have sacred music? Like, I've heard of a Novus Ordo that has sacred music and Ad Orientem, other than Father Heilmann's, but not very many.
They're few and far between.
No, but this is, I mean, lector. It seems, you can kind of, that's one of the minor orders that people like remember because they've seen it in the Novus Ordo if they're from Novus Ordo world. So, here's a comment.
Yeah.
I wish one of you can go
debate Tim Gordon.
I feel you guys have no, Tim Gordon would definitely run circles around me at least. I don't really have very many.
It would depend on what the topic is. I saw he was doing a live stream today because he was sour grapes on Taylor Marshall's take on the superiors, the superior generals of the ED. I'm going to call them. Listen, I'm going to call them Ecclesia Dei groups or the ED groups, which is commonly known as erectile dysfunction, because these guys are basically limp. Okay, they're useless. These guys are weak sauce. Okay, ED is a terrific acronym for them. So anyway, the Super Gordon brothers are angry, of course, as Canon 212 Frank Walker calls them, like the skateboard thugs or whatever.
Thug brothers.
Thug brothers or whatever. They don't like Taylor Marshall's take. Okay, I mean, that's a legitimate opinion, but what they're doing is they're using the Taylor Marshall name to try to get clicks. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we do use clickbait all the time to try to get you, but it's
Yeah.
okay because we're not making money off of this. We're doing this
Well,
for laughs.
I'm making about $20 a month, but without the super chats, I calculated this whole month I might have made, is it $10 or 15?
Well, that's big money. I mean,
I know.
if this was 1921, you would be like $10 is enough to buy like pay for your rent on Baltic Avenue or Mediterranean Avenue.
Well, hey, I'll be able to fill up my gas tank with the YouTube revenue that I'm generating.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, by the way, stick around after we're done with this, doing all these ordinations. We're going to have an announcement, ladies and gentlemen, about super chats. As Rush Limbaugh used to call it, we'll talk about our obscene profit breaks, okay? Because we get all this money and we don't know what to do with it, but we've come up with some very worthy causes to whom to give this money, okay? So we'll get to that here. Okay, are you ready to ordain exorcists, John?
Sure, we need
This
more.
is what everybody has been waiting for, because when people find out that exorcists are a minor order, they want to know all about like spinning heads and vomiting pea soup and like, all that stuff. So the guys come up and they kneel, and the bishop gives them this exhortation. He says, "Dearly beloved children who are about to be ordained to the office of exorcist, you ought to understand what you take upon yourselves, for it is the duty of the exorcist to cast out devils, to tell the people that whoever is not going to communion is to give way to those who are, and during the service to administer the water when required. You receive then the power of imposing hands upon the possessed, and by the imposition of your hands, together with the grace of the Holy Ghost and the words of the exorcism, the unclean spirits are cast out of the bodies of the possessed. Study, therefore, that as you cast out devils from the bodies of others, in like manner you drive from your own minds and bodies all uncleanness and wickedness, lest you succumb to those whom by your ministry you drive out of others. Learn by your office to subdue your passions, lest the enemy be able to lay claim to anything in your conduct as his own. For then only will you rightly command devils in others, when you shall have first overcome in yourselves their manifold wickedness, which may the Lord grant you to do by his Holy Spirit." So, this is what one thing that's interesting here. Okay, he gives him the duty to cast out the devils, but he go tell the people that whoever is not going to communion to get out of the way of the people who are. So don't clog up. I think this was probably also these rituals date back to before pews even existed. So there was just a mass of people standing, kneeling there and, wandering around trying to get up to the altar rail. And so it was the job of the exorcist to go and like push people out of the way and get some order, and then to administer the water. I'm not sure if that's at the hand washing during the offertory. Well, I think probably, and then the ablutions after the Holy Communion of the priest. Now, the bishop gives them a book. It's a ritual book which has the exorcisms in it. And he says, "Receive and commit to memory, and have power to impose hands on the possessed, be they baptized or catechumens." Then the bishop stands and says, "Let us humbly beseech God the Almighty Father to vouchsafe to bless these his servants for the office of exorcist, that they may be spiritual rulers for casting out devils with all their multiform wickedness from the bodies of the possessed." And then the bishop says another prayer, "Vouchsafe to bless these thy servants for the office of exorcist, that by the imposition of hands, together with the words of the exorcism, they may have power and authority to subjugate the unclean spirits, and also that they may be approved physicians of thy church, confirmed by the gift of healing and by heavenly virtue, through our Lord Jesus Christ," etc., etc. So a couple remarks there. One is that, for instance, in Fraternity of St. Peter, Institute of Christ the King, Society of St. Pius X, all the sedevacantist groups that use this old ordination, they're actually making exorcists who do have the power to cast out demons. Now, what goes on, at least in the Novus Ordo, well, the mainstream church, like Fraternity of St. Peter, Institute of Christ the King, is after they get this exorcism power, the bishop says, "Oh, by the way, you're not allowed to actually use any of that power until you're a priest, okay?" So I don't understand why they do this. To me, it's sort of like play acting. If you're going to give the guy the order, why do you go and immediately restrict him from using the powers that you just gave him? Does that make any sense? That's called spiritual contraception. That's contraception, and I don't understand why you're doing that. If the guy's not advanced enough in power, spiritually formed enough to hold the order of exorcist, why are you ordaining him? It's a blasphemy.
So are the exorcists not actually going out and doing exorcism themselves, are they?
In the old days, before probably the 1700s or 1600s, yeah, they were going out. They were tasked to go out and do exorcisms on people, on catechumens and the baptized.
Okay.
And essentially, they're just they're praying the prayers from the ritual book and laying hands on people. Taylor Marshall, when he did his show about the minor orders, said that basically they would go around, I think, every day or once a week and lay hands on every catechumen to cast out devils from them. And this was part of the process through Lent leading up to their baptism.
Okay. Do we want to move on or get to the chat?
Let's go back to that chat. Runs from Bears.
Okay. Well, we have a few people.
Don't understand how Gordon thinks the Pope has the authority. I don't understand how he thinks he has the authority to destroy sacred tradition. I mean, the whole purpose of the papacy in the papal oath is to hand on what he's been given in tradition. So that's basically blasphemous to say that the Pope has the authority to destroy tradition. And this is what happens when you invent a new religion from scratch, which is the Vatican II religion. When you've invented the whole thing from scratch, and you have to rationalize this, and you have to say, okay, the Pope did it, and I'm not brave enough to oppose the Pope, so how do I get around this and rationalize it? And you do mental gymnastics, and you say, oh, he actually does have the power to destroy tradition. When according to everybody up until that time, they said, no, the Pope doesn't have the authority to destroy tradition, and rather his role is to pass on tradition.
Yeah, so, I think Michael Lofton from Reason Theology kind of is on the same boat, and they're kind of gathering their network together, because I don't know if it's more. I don't want to speculate on their motives, but I know that that's their niche. The traditionalist world isn't big enough for everyone.
Well, so the problem with those guys is that Lofton, although he does like the traditional Latin Mass, he has to go the Novus Ordo because it's not available where he is, nor Eastern rites. So he has to come up with some justification. It's a justification, a coping mechanism, a rationalization for defending the Novus Ordo against attacks from sedevacantists and Eastern Orthodox. And he rightly believes in Roman Catholicism. He rightly believes in it. But when he looks at the Novus Ordo, you can't jive Roman Catholicism with the Novus Ordo. So you have to do a gymnastics then to justify the Novus Ordo, which is what he's doing.
Yeah, and I kind of went through a stretch like that myself, where I didn't actually attend the Novus Ordo per se, but I was kind of searching out the Novus Ordo can be done reverently. How can it be done reverently? And the conclusion's really just the conclusion for me was, well, you have a pretty nearby Byzantine church, might as well just go there instead of
why bother with this disaster?
Even a mediocre Byzantine Divine Liturgy is better than the best Novus Ordo in my opinion, but I don't know. That's my opinion. And Patty, he said he's referring to what
the previous commenter runs from Bears.
Hasn't really the authority to order a burger. Okay.
It's
Yeah, that's good. All
I
right,
don't
let's see.
understand. I really don't understand this knee jerk reaction to defend the Pope and say he has the authority to destroy tradition. It's
Yeah,
self defeating. You're turning yourself into a Protestant with these mental gymnastics. I don't understand. You know what's weird is that Gordon and Michael Lofton used to criticize the Pope all the time back when Amoris Laetitia was still around. But now I guess they found out that there's more business opportunities or whatever in being the defender of the aberrant papacy of Bergoglio rather than trying to stick with tradition. I don't understand it because very clearly they've said that Amoris Laetitia is evil and death penalty, his change on death penalty is evil. But now all of a sudden they're like rushing to his aid and saying like, "Oh yes, Holy Father, keep beating the traditionalists. Schism is good. We love it when you break away from the pre-Vatican II Church." Do they love the Pachamama idols? Do they love the dancing girls? Do they love the complete abandonment of Latin? It's madness.
well, you could book them on the show My Journey Home to Opus Dei.
My journey home to the balloon mass. They can be on with Parent Ryan, okay, and they'll say
Okay.
how great the balloon mass is. The dancing. Where's that the rapping priest who's like, yeah, that's they'll be on with that priest. Um, are you ready to get ordained an acolyte, John?
Yeah, let's go.
Here we go. So they come up and kneel. The bishop says, "It is the duty of the acolyte to carry the candlestick, to light the lights of the church, and to minister wine and water for the Eucharist." And that, by the way, is the laity receive a mixture of water and wine after they receive Holy Communion. That's the tradition according to the pre-55 Missal. "Strive, therefore, worthily to fulfill the office once you have received it, for you shall not be able to please God, if carrying in your hands a light before him, you serve the works of darkness, and thereby set an example of faithlessness to others. But as truth says, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven." And there's a couple scriptural quotes, many of them actually. "Be therefore solicitous in all justice and goodness and truth, to enlighten yourselves and others in the church of God. For then will you worthily supply wine and water in the divine sacrifice, when by a chaste life and good works you shall have offered yourselves as a sacrifice to God." So then the bishop gives them a candlestick and they touch it. And he says, "Receive the candlestick with the candle, and know that you are bound to the lighting of the lights of the church." And then he gives them a cruet and says, "Receive the cruet for ministering wine and water for the Eucharist of the blood of the Lord." And then he says a blessing over them. He says, "Vouchsafe to bless his servants for the order of acolyte, so that bearing before themselves a visible light in their hands, they may also show forth in their conduct a spiritual light. We beg this through the assistance of our Lord Jesus Christ," etc. And then he takes off his mitre and gives a final blessing to them. Those are the Lord and his apostles, who, in order to blot out the ancient handwriting of our death, didst will that he should be nailed to the standard of the most glorious cross, and that blood and water should flow from his side for the salvation of the human race. Vouchsafe to bless these, thy servants, for the office of acolyte, so that in lighting the lights of thy church, and in presenting the wine and water for the consecration of the blood of Christ in the Eucharistic oblation, they may faithfully minister at thy holy altars. And then there's more prayers. This one's about lighting the lamps in the tabernacle of testimony. And this one is about illumine their minds with the light of knowledge, and water them with the dew of thy piety, that with thine aid they may so fulfill the ministry which they have received. That is the end of the four minor orders. Any questions there, John, about the acolytes?
Nope. Let's see. We do have a comment. Yeah, who said, I asked Gordon what he was going to do when the Pachamama's on the altar. Will he still feel the same about Francis' authority? Where's the line? Well, I think, and I don't, I don't want to completely trash Tim Gordon. I think when worse comes to worse, like if this communion for Protestants thing goes through, I think Tim this, like I think he'll, he'd draw the line somewhere. And like for some people though, I don't know.
My question is, I talked to a priest before Amoris Laetitia, and he told me that communion for the divorced and married was a red line and would be schismatic, heretical, and that Bergoglio would become an anti-pope. And then, but basically he did it, but he did it with all this trickery and fine print and footnotes and subterfuge. But he got what he wanted. So the justification is there for the bad guys. But apart from the small number of I guess the Veganos, the Schneiders, maybe Burke. Burke did ask these questions. Like no priests, nobody stood up and said, no, we can't accept Amoris Laetitia. It's heretical.
Yeah, well, and I do wonder though about priests. I think there probably are some priests like Father James Altman. There are priests similar to Father James Altman, but they just don't have a camera in their face.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they're out there, but I don't think anyone's publicizing it, and that's fine. Keep them in their local communities. Don't blow their cover because they might get removed. We hear about priests being removed from time to time, and
yeah,
these are some of the good priests. So I don't know. And then you have the Latin Mass. And so I don't know. I mean, it's hard to actually get a gauge of what's going on without really going around talking to people, and you hear things, and we have we hear a lot of things now, and we have some pretty big. I have some pretty big stories coming up, just to tease that, I guess, a little bit. Here's a straight up comment. When will people realize Bergoglio is the master of the hidden hand? He is a Freemason. Well,
it does
right.
seem that way.
That's certainly credible. Oh, did I just close something out?
I unshared that. I'm going to share the next topic here.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and I think it's pretty tough. Like, and for me, I don't know that it's really a big deal because who's Pope. And I'll say this: it's because like in the Middle Ages, people always make the statement in the Middle Ages, no one really knew who was Pope, but they still held fast to the doctrines of the Church.
True.
And so, so I don't know that. Like, we spend a lot of effort researching, like, oh, is Benedict still Pope? And I don't know that that really has a significant impact on our spiritual lives. Like, you can read, it can actually be detrimental because if you read the stuff that Pope Francis says every day, and you get really angry about it, that's not really helping you at all.
Which is basically what happened to Sko Joke.
I mean, and if you watch the complainers and the like in the videos, and like Taylor Marshall, I think he does some good stuff. But if you're just gonna watch that and just get angry, then don't do it. Go read the Bible instead.
That's why our audience loves us, John, because we are glad trads. We're always upbeat, and we tell jokes and sing songs and do funny things, and nobody's depressed after watching our program. We're entertained.
Not. Because if you are, you really need to stop watching.
You stop watching us. You're depressed. We try to make. We're like the Novus Ordo, but except we introduce jokes and stuff, but we're not pretending to be a mass. Okay, you'll get all the entertainment. We're better than the Novus. Our jokes are funny, and our songs that we sing are actually involve talent and creativity.
Well, yeah. They're not published by Oregon Catholic Press.
No, and also David Haas and Marty Hagen and none of the St. Louis Jesuits. By the way, somebody said one of my epic sayings that should be on a T-shirt was that I had said that every St. Louis Jesuit either left the priesthood and or became a homosexual, and I or was accused of some sexual crime. And I think I do stand by that. I think every one of the St. Louis Jesuits either left the priesthood and married a woman or a man, or went to jail was accused of sexual misconduct.
I don't know if any of them were accused. I think a lot of them were in LMNOP relationships.
Yeah, I think one is married to a man.
Yeah. Well, that's the case for Ray Rep. I was going to do a segment on him sometime.
Was he a St. Louis Jesuit?
No, he's the founder of the Folk Mass, though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was before. He was like, I guess he was the one who led to the St. Louis Jesuits, or maybe provided some of the music. I don't know,
okay.
But yeah.
All right. Before we move on to the next topic, I want to announce this super duper big fundraiser that we're going to do, because I was thinking we got like $50 in super chats. Was that last week or the week before, John?
I don't remember. Last week.
Yeah, so we got this $50 in super chats, and we said, like, no, we don't want this money. And I said, why are we going to let this money go to waste? So what we're going to do is like some kind of telethon thing. I'm going to sing some songs. We're going to auction off. I have Parent Ryan's collection of empty tab cans. Okay, and Parent Ryan's actually going to make an appearance too on a live stream. And John, you can talk to him since you haven't seen him in such a while. He'll donate some of his empty tab cans. Anybody that donates any money in this super chat, if you donate over, let's say, like $10, Parent Ryan will send you one of his empty tab cans, and they'll be autographed, okay? And then I will double his. I'll match your donation. And we're going to give some of that money to Brother Martin and his monastery, okay? And then the rest, some of that money, we're going to give to the Penn State Latin Mass Society. As you know, we had some of those kids on our program before. So they're doing good stuff at Penn State. So they need some money to do their operations. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to encourage you to give, but you're going to give to a good cause. So we're going to announce this in advance, and we'll have this live stream, and I'll write some parody songs about schism and the Novus Ordo balloon mass or whatever. Parent Ryan will make an appearance. I don't know if there'll be any other special guest stars on this telethon. And we'll collect all these super chats, and we'll have people, they'll set up their Patreon. I don't know what they're called, whatever those sites were that we discussed in the pre-show, John. One was called like Give Butter or something. So anyway, that's the announcement. Stay tuned for that big thing.
Yeah, we're going to do our research, see what works best for what we want to do.
Yeah, it's going to be better than like the Star Wars holiday special. Believe me.
Well, with Parent Ryan making a return.
The great, yes, Parent Ryan will be gracing your screens.
Yeah, I'm sure he won't be too thrilled with Brother Martin and
well, he doesn't. Just don't let him know that the money's going to Brother Martin and the Penn State LMS. Just convince him that it's going to BetU's Legal Defense Fund, okay?
Yeah, we'll do that.
And we'll tell him that, okay?
Cardinal McCarrick's team.
Yeah, Team McCarrick. They're going to do a deal on McCarrick Island.
Yeah, or just pay for his lawyers.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go and share this window here. All right, so what we're going to talk about here is Brett had asked a question. He said, how come nobody's done anything? Doesn't it seem like nobody's doing anything out there in this crisis in the church? And I said, aha, to quote Lee Corso, not so fast. Here's my pen. Not so fast, my friend. Things have been done in the past by very intelligent prelates, holy prelates who stood up for the Catholic faith and did something. The problem with today's prelates and today's clerics is they're all weak-kneed, and they won't follow the example of these great defenders of the faith. They're worried more about a paycheck and a canonical status more than they are with Catholic orthodoxy and holy tradition and upholding the faith. they're not willing to go fight this fight. They like their cushy bed and their Lexus that they're driving, and they won't accept the rides and the Ubers and the horseback or on foot or on the public bus and the sleeping in the roach infested mattress, in some gulag somewhere. So I said, look, we've already had a bunch of great prelates who stood up for the faith years ago. We've got Archbishop Lefebvre, who founded the SSPX, consecrated 4 bishops. Who knows how many priests he made? Bishop Antonio Castro Meyer, who refused to give up his diocese in Brazil. He kept the old mass. He co-consecrated bishops with Archbishop Lefebvre. You have Father Gerard de Laurier. Father Gerard de Laurier was a Dominican theologian. He taught at one of the pontifical universities in Rome. He co-authored or helped to ghostwrite Pope Pius XII's proclamation of the dogma of the Assumption. After Vatican II hit and things were going really, really crazy, he began to question the whole situation, and he kind of became one of the founders of the idea of sedevacantism. And he developed the Cassiacacum thesis, I believe it's called, of the material formal distinction between of the papacy. We discussed the Cassiacacum thesis in our Sedevacantist show. So Father Gerard de Laurier was consecrated a bishop in secret by Archbishop Tuke, and he later on consecrated, don't remember who exactly, if it was the Mexican seminary professors. We'll get to them later. Abbé de Nantes, he was, I believe, a monk in France who became one of the early Sedevacantists. Archbishop Tuke, of course, everybody knows him. Whatever you think about him, he tried to do something in the period after Vatican II to save tradition. Father Gomar de Paul. I wanted to do a segment on Father Gomar de Paul. Like, very few people have heard of him. Do you know who he is, John?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't even know that I've heard the name.
He was a seminary professor at Mount St. Mary's in Maryland in the 50s. Okay. And he was, I believe, incarnated in the Diocese of Baltimore. After the new Mass, like some liturgical changes that were going on, the new Mass was about to come out. He established this thing called the Catholic Traditionalist Movement, and they produced propaganda, and they had meetings and whatnot. And he ran afoul of a modernist bishop, I think it was Sheehan in Baltimore, who really gave him a hard time. And he basically sort of told the bishop to pound sand, and he went and set up an independent chapel in Long Island and kept saying the traditional Latin Mass and promoting it every day of his life until he died. I think he died in like 2004 or 5 or something. Maybe it was 7. I don't know if he ever got to see that. He was vindicated with the motu proprio of Benedict XVI, that the old Mass was never forbidden. He's a great story. I want to do a show about him. But you watch his YouTubes. Go look up Father Gomar de Paul YouTubes. There's one called it's maybe called the Mass of the Ages, or it's something like that. It's a cri de coeur or a manifesto about the preservation of the traditional Latin Mass. We got Father Robert McKenna. He was a Dominican theologian. I think he taught in Rome. He later became a Sedevacantist and was consecrated a bishop from the Tuke line. So he was another guy who said, grave problems, emergency situation, I need to do something. Abbot Leonard Jardina, OSB, he was down in, I think, Cullman, Alabama. He was just a monk in one of the Benedictine monastery down there, from the Cassinese congregation. So one of the daughter houses of St. Vincent's. And when they started to go crazy after Vatican II, he says, whoa, something's really wrong here. So he left and got some other guys to leave with him, and they set up this independent monastery. And it was sort of like quasi-Sedevacantist or whatever. And but anyway, unfortunately, he died, and the whole thing broke up. It was taken over by it was given by the after Abbot Leonard died. Then it was inherited by Father Sebastian, who is a good guy. I actually met Father Sebastian, and he made a deal with the local bishop to give them control of the monastery. And then he went and he was living with the canons regular St. John Cantius. But the crazy thing about him is, so he was ordained a priest by, I think, Bishop McKenna, and who's of the Tuke line. And so when he was regularized with Rome, they said, "Oh yeah, we don't want you because we can't verify your orders or whatever right now. We have to do an investigation, so don't say mass anymore." And the problem is that they've been investigating, and they won't give them a go ahead and say, like, you either are or not ordained, or we want you to do a conditional ordination. So he's only allowed to say mass like in secret or whatever. I'm assuming that it's secret, that they even allow him to say mass at all, because Rome has completely given up the idea that they should adjudicate questions like this on sacramental validity. They've given up. They're not trying to be Catholic in Rome anymore. They won't answer dubia. They won't tell you whether your orders are valid or any of this stuff. So the bottom line is, these are not clowns who just like popped out of the car, all 16 of them with big red noses, you know, the kind that you've seen Bergoglio put on. These were elite bishops, priests, and theologians. They were some of the most respected people of their day. People who live in the Novus Ordo bubble, and even in the modern day trad bubble, they don't even know these guys existed. They don't know anything about them. They don't pay attention to what they did or what they said. It's very important. Those who are not familiar with history, they don't learn history, then they're doomed to repeat it. That's where we're at again. They're out there trying to repeat, shutting down the traditional Latin Mass and squashing tradition. And nobody's following the example of these bishops and priests. So I think that people in the mainstream think that they've just got to wait for somebody to pull the fire alarm before they run out the door. But what are they waiting for? You just had Bishop Huander, who retired from his Novus Ordo diocese and went and lived with the SSPX. He didn't say anything. It might not happen. But it seems to me like the Novus Ordo people are frogs getting boiled in water. And there's people outside the canonical status of the church who are out there saying, look, the roof is on fire. It's going to collapse like Notre Dame Cathedral. Somebody's got to do something about this. But the people inside, who are the Francis fans and some of the fair weather trads, the sola obediencia crowd, they're in there and they're saying, like, oh no, this is fine. They're like that meme of the dog who's drinking coffee in the 4 panels and the house is burning up around him. And in the last pane, like, his face is melting off and he's there. This is fine. But people outside, they're also in there saying, like, from the book of prophet Jeremiah, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord. Nothing bad's going to happen to us because this is the temple of the Lord. It's polluted. It's filled with idolaters and perverts. You know, it's being disfigured by bad guys. And you just can't stay in there and say this is fine when it's on fire and say the temple of the Lord. You've got to do something. Get out there and put out the fire. Get out there and do something.
Well, and you know, the sola obediencia crowd, they'll say, well, we'll just use the holy water inside the church to put out this fire. Well, guess what?
Oh, wait, it was taken away.
The holy water is banned by your bishops.
And it's probably fake anyway, because if it was blessed according to the Novus Ordo, all it is happy water. It's not even real holy water. Yeah, another thing, the sola obediencia crowd, they're sitting there drinking their coffee saying this is fine. But Bergoglio's there saying, no, fire is good. This is perfectly normal for the roof to be on fire and for your face to be melting off. This is what the new springtime looks like.
Yeah, fire's a symbol of the new Pentecost.
Yeah, it is. It's the new Pentecost. Everybody's dying in the house of smoke inhalation and they're charred with 3rd-degree burns. But trust me, this is the new springtime and things have never been better. And there's a total continuity between this and the pre-Vatican II church. Okay, just trust me.
So where was Bishop Huander from, and when did he retire?
He was the guy. Remember Chur, Switzerland, where they got the buff bodybuilding bishop who was 70 and he looked like he was 40. That guy.
So that was just within the past year, then.
Yeah, but he maybe
Wow.
within 2 years. Because remember, that see was vacant for like a year because they couldn't get anybody to go in
Yeah,
there.
yeah, because there was so much conflict.
Conflict between the trads and the libs, so they
Yeah,
couldn't get a guy until they got the bodybuilding bishop with his tight t-shirts. He was put in there, and immediately he gave communion to Protestants. But Huander was in that see before.
yeah. All right.
Let's go
Um,
see these comments here. Louis Marie de Montfort, 755.
yeah. Does not Lex Orandi Lex Credendi pertain to the mass of all ages of TLM? When the TLM is
Yes.
banned by the Freemasons in the Catholic Church, will the faith in its pure beliefs start to diminish?
Yes, and that was the point of the bad guys. It had always been a patristic. Can you leave that up there?
Yeah.
It had always been a patristic maxim, the lex orandi, lex credendi. You learn from the liturgy what ought to be believed, and that's always been the case. And so, if you look at the traditional Latin Mass, how this is like the clinching point for me. Why I can never accept the Novus Ordo. If you see in the traditional Latin Mass how careful the priest is with his fingers, with the host, the particles, he's scraping, he's rubbing, the fingers are together, they're getting washed at the end. Nobody touches the Eucharist besides him. And then you go from that to the Novus Ordo, and you're like, this isn't possible. This isn't possible for this to be like the same religion or the same theology. So if the ritual is changed, well, then that means the credendi, the law of believing, has been changed as well. So that was the whole point. That Bunini and the bad guys, they confessed. They said, like, we got to get rid of this thing because the theology isn't compatible. The old worship of the mass is not compatible with the new theology. Now they haven't turned their attention to the Eastern rites because it doesn't really pertain to
Thankfully.
them. They're yeah, thank God, they're interested in destroying the faith in Western Europe. Thank God, not Eastern Europe yet. But so they all have the good worship and the good theology in the East. But yeah, you're 100% right.
All right, and I'm going to go to Patty's comment. We did see McCarrick going to court. Now, I got to be honest. I don't actually know Harvey Weinstein's situation. Is he in jail?
I honestly don't know. He might have.
Uh,
No, that was Bill Cosby that got out.
no, this is.
Uh,
I think he's either in jail because I think was it Epstein that was killed.
yeah.
Suicide. But no, I want McCarrick to survive through the trial because I don't want him to die before the trial's over, which he's in his 90s. That could happen.
Yeah. Yeah, it says Weinstein was found guilty. Looks like he's in jail still. So
Okay.
yeah, McCarrick
Yeah,
borrowed his walker.
I mean, I don't, you know, I just hope the information comes out about McCarrick, no matter how. Okay, yeah, no matter how what happens, how long it takes. I just want the information to come out. You know, let's just get it out in court. That'd be great.
Yeah, that's why I hope McCarrick lives a long time. That way he can spill all the beans and
Yeah,
tell us where the bodies are buried.
give him a chance to repent. It's looking unlikely, but you never know. St. Paul, was knocked off his high horse, so it could happen.
Yeah. We had joked, remember we had joked that McCarrick was going to convert, turn into a rad trad. Then he was going to come and consecrate me a set of a conscious bishop. But he'd have to get like conditionally reordained by like Bishop Pivarunas or Bishop Williamson first.
Oh boy.
So
So,
anyway, they could
yeah,
be like co-consecrated.
that's even more unlikely than McCarrick.
Hey, well, there's always a chance until the day your
Yeah.
corpse is cold.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, do you have any closing thoughts?
No, that's all. It was
Okay.
we covered the four minor orders, and we covered some people who were willing to stand up to tradition and didn't worry about canonical status and their paycheck.
Yeah, so always a lot of stuff to talk about. So, as always, for the viewers, thanks for watching. This has been the Thunder and Lightning Show, and we are the laity.
And we will not be silent.